Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming so early in the morning. Look at all the lovely people. You woke early. My name is Charles van Sandwyk. I'm an illustrator and a writer, and I work with 3 or 4 of my favorite people in the whole wide world to try and create beautiful books for a tender-hearted world, tender-hearted audience, and I think all the tender-hearted people are here today, which is lovely. My subject, which you have the misfortune to endure this morning, is heritage. And why I say that is because I'm one of those dreadful people you'll meet from time to time who clings hopelessly to the past. But before you gasp in dismay, I will remind you, our philosophy is not exactly what was written on this whiskey bottle that one of our readers sent us from Calgary. One of our readers who knows how bad things get. It's called Writer's Tears, and it says, I traded my tomorrows to remain in yesterday. Well, to my mind, heritage is the passion for bringing the past into the future. All of the techniques and skills I've learned in my creative career, we'll save that for later, have been handed down from the past. My inspiration has come from artists as far back as Albrecht Dürer in the 1500s, and then later Rembrandt van Rijn in the 1600s. But you know, you can take it back much further than this. Communication through word and through line really transcends eons. You look back to the first artist who drew an exquisite antelope on a cave wall in France 10 or 12,000 years ago, and that artist still communicates to us today with that ancient elegance of line. Now, I find that astounding when we go through all of our modern day of cluttered up, clamorous inelegance, to think that a man with a great, or a lady with a great sense of detail and understanding of the natural form is still communicating with us today. You can see there's a slide, I think a slide there. Yeah, those are all of the materials we work with. You can see marbled paper, there's some letterpress, some etchings, watercolors, and lovely, lovely Somerset cream printmaking paper. Basically, we try and work in an old world style because I think it's nice to inform our present day with something that isn't just purely looking toward the future. This is an etching of a tree scribe, you can see, and the technique of copperplate etching is basically unchanged since Rembrandt's day. Rembrandt developed this technique. It's the Dutch mordant solution, and so I made an etching plate of a tree scribe, and there's a little bit of gold being gilded. That's a medieval shell gold, which is applied by brush and then burnished with a houndstooth burnisher. Many years ago, when I finished art school at Cap College, fortune took me to a little island in Fiji. I was a backpacker and fell in love with the island and its inhabitants. And the old lady who I stayed with said, well, if you like it so much, why don't you come build your house here? And, you know, look, it's up to each of us to find poetry in our lives. You know, luckily, mine came in the form of 3 old men and a Fijian kid who built for me this thatched hut. And I lived in it for 10 years until tropical storms took it to pieces. That's me in the middle. That's 40 pounds ago. And the lady on the right-hand side is Lynn Brown, who used to run the Salmagundi shop here in Gastown. She visited. And the little fellow on the left corner, you can see a little head sticking out there. That's Sam Doughty. He taught me to speak Fijian, and their family taught me how to do subsistence farming and fishing. And there's the incredible thing with dealing with ancient living skills is it makes everything else in your life make perfect sense. Subsistence farming, too, is a form of poetry. Okay, that house came down, and then we built this wooden and tin shed. There you can see Waisiki Doughty is in the audience. He's been here with us for 10 years, working with me in Canada. His dad is the old chap on the left. Sam, who was the one in the previous picture who taught me how to speak Fijian, the little fellow, he's the one standing up right behind me. So he and his lovely wife, his exhausted lovely wife, have 6 children. And there's Uncle Joe and a couple of Waisiki's nieces and nephews in the front as well. So we've all sort of worked together for 30 years. That's heritage, I think. There's another form of heritage, ancient way of cooking. Delicious to have fish, but hard to pull the bits of charcoal out from between your teeth afterwards. Vancouver, the studio here is small, not much in the way of electronics. We do have electricity, you'll be happy to hear, but a small desk, not too much, nothing crashes, nothing breaks down. Maybe once in a while a pen doesn't work and you have to change pens. But small studio space, and there's Waisiki binding the books. Our original binder passed away very sadly in January, and Waisiki took on. Waisiki and I have always worked on the Savuti Press material, which is, he does hand marbling, prints the etchings, does the binding, and in this case he's working on Affairs of the Heart, which is different forms of love according to animals. Okay, there you can see Waisiki happy at work. See, my desk is much smaller than his, see? Yeah. I'd like to draw attention also to the bed in the corner. If you've worked with Fijians, you know they're very fond of taking an afternoon nap, right? With that kind of smile, there's no such thing as an unhappy ending in any of our stories. This is in Fiji, my writing desk, and where I do my drawing, looking out toward where the sun rises in the east. My inspiration for the writing I do, especially the South Seas literature, is definitely Robert Louis Stevenson. There's a much more expanded view of my workspace. You can see the veranda out on the left-hand side. That's where we took the family photograph a little earlier. And these are the official headquarters of the Savuti Press. On a sunny day, even a windy day, it's always great to take work outside. I'd like to show you a few pictures. I'm working on Alice in Wonderland for the Folio Society in London. So this is our white rabbit. And Folio, in their kindness, asked if I would do the same image but in pen and ink for the cover of the book. Now, when you work with the Folio Society, you have the chance to work in a way that publishing seldom exceeds these days. They'll give you 4 or 5 different gold foil stamps on a cover of a book, so it's very luxurious. My idea of Alice is based on the original Alice Liddell that Lewis Carroll wrote the book for back in the 1850s. So you see Alice with the Cheshire Cat, Alice with a caterpillar, and I designed some Victorian scraps that will be placed in the book as if they came out of Alice's own Victorian scrapbook. A few more pictures, if I can persuade you. This is the grizzly bear from the Canadian Content, which Rick and Mark and Ryan and Maya came out and filmed last week at our cottage. And there's the cozy little beaver's lodge. fairy mouse serenading the moon. And if we go back in to the past 100 years, a lot of what I work on and the techniques I use are techniques that were popularized by Arthur Rackham and Beatrix Potter. And Rackham is a great influence on my work, as you can see here. This book, The Fairy Market, which I encourage you all to rush out and purchase, is a book dedicated to the memory of Arthur Rackham, who always drew denizens of fairies and elves in under the tangled roots of trees. And my favorite, owls. Ancient bird in spotted cloak, hardly stirring, seldom spoke. There we go. A few more little fellows. A lot of the inspiration for my work comes from friends and family. As I said, I've had the fortune to work with the same people for many, many years. And a couple of years ago, Waisiki's younger sister, Lucy, said to me, "Charlie, tell me a Christmas story." And it was around Christmas time. I went and looked at my bookshelf in Fiji, and there were no Christmas books on the shelf. And I said, "Well, I don't have anything to read you." You've got to remember when they were 6 or 7 years old, Lucy loved The Hobbit. She loved Tolkien. And I read that book through to these kids, these poor kids, 3 or 4 times. And they loved it. So I said to Lucy, "Well, I've got nothing to read you, girl." And she said, "Well, make it up." I said, "Well, what would you like in the Christmas book?" She said, "Well, I'd like to see the North Pole. I would like at least one polar bear, and of course, Father Christmas. The rest is up to you." So immediately this sent me scurrying for a pad to jot down a list of contents, because I knew that this would be a more complicated book than the usual thing I write, which is 4 lines, 40 pictures, and you're done. So, I think, unfortunately for you, I'm going to read this to you. This is called An Unexpected Gift. One must prepare for the future. You may not realize it, but Christmases of the future will one day become a lot more like Christmas used to be in the past. Is this okay for July? Christmas in July, yeah. "When this comes to pass, I will be a very old man, and you, my dear children, will be comfortably middle-aged and with children of your own. How do I know this? While there is very little magic about me, the magic seems to skip every second generation in my family. I am able to tell you about what will happen to Christmas when you're all grown up, because I have an ever so slightly immortal uncle who you know of only too well. He is the man responsible for making and delivering your Christmas presents each year. That's right. Father Christmas, or Old Saint Nick, is my great-great-great-great-granduncle on mother's side. Now, the story I wish to tell you involves another less famous but equally wonderful great-great-great-great-uncle who lives at the South Pole, Uncle St. Bartholomew. Let's just give you a little bit of north and south. There's North Pole, there's South Pole. We're leading up to this picture-wise. You can't have it all at once, sorry. How these 2 old men ended up at the opposite ends of the earth is a long story, perhaps better saved for another time. Let's just say that through family circumstances, one was given the North Pole to look after and the other the South. Nobody really wanted either pole, actually, cold, bleak places. And Uncle Bartholomew, being rather partial to the color green, was rather hoping for Greenland. At any rate, my 2 great uncles made magic in the cold and dreary places they were given, and there is something to be said for that. So, our story began on the 11th of December, in the middle of the worst thunderstorm Father Christmas had ever seen. 3 gigantic storm clouds stretched across the sky, one over London, another over New York, and the third, especially large, hung ominously over the North Pole. Father Christmas had just switched on the northern lights to brighten things up a little when, in one glorious and colossal thunderclap, which shook the Statue of Liberty nearly off her feet, she lost her torch and her teeth. The whole world went dark. Big Ben froze midway through the 11th chime in London, and a bolt of lightning struck the North Pole with such force it knocked the pole itself off true north and on to a 15-degree angle. Let me see if I can show you what that looks like. Okay. No, that part comes later. The slides are all mixed up. There you go. North Pole, 15-degree angle. Father Christmas in his underwear. That's dedication. Okay, let's go back there. You'll see more of it later. Back to north meets south, okay? Well, you can imagine the panic and the fuss this caused. In stormy weather at the North Pole, hailstones are the size of turnips, so an umbrella is useless, and only the polar bears get through a storm without bumps and bruises. Reindeer ran this way, elves ran that way, dodging hailstones but bumping into one another. When the weather calmed a little and the stars began to show themselves, Father Christmas, who was generally a calm old fellow, knew he must fix whatever he could, and straight away. He sent the elves out with boxes and boxes of northern light bulbs to replace the burned out ones, but it was to no avail. The power simply did not come on, and they were left in darkness. So, emergency flares were lit, and while Father Christmas was hitching up 111 polar bears and 12 reindeer to pull the North Pole back in line again, he had a thought. The whole world may be in darkness. See, there's some polar bears, 1, 2, 3, 4. The other 106 are there, and the other 11 reindeer. Father Christmas had a thought. The whole world may be in darkness. The whole world may be turning itself inside out with worry, for the electrical burnout was so complete it might take months to fix. But he was Father Christmas, and he still had a very important job to do. His job was to deliver and guarantee a Merry Christmas to all. As you well know, the sorts of toys children ask for nowadays are all attached to an electrical cable. The kinds of gadgets and games which really do all the playing by themselves and which suck out children's imagination and turn their brains to jelly. Perhaps you can sense where this is going. Nearly all the toys Father Christmas had been making ran on electricity. He marched off to his study, pushed the door closed behind him, and lifted a dusty old earpiece, which looked like a trumpet, off its hook, and blew down the brass mouthpiece attached to a long tube which came up through a hole in the floor beside his desk. He bellowed down the tube. "Hello, Bartholomew, are you there?" There was no answer. "Bartholomew, this is Nicholas. Can you hear me?" Father Christmas heard a faint quacking sound and then a rather muffled, "Hello, Bartholomew the Green here. Who is this?" Bartholomew always adopted a formal tone when the speaking tube was handed to him by a junior penguin. "Who am I speaking with? Is that you, Rudolph?" No, this is Rudolph's employer, Nicholas the Red," said Father Christmas. "Ah, Nicholas, you old walrus. You should have said so earlier. Oh, I haven't heard from you in a puffin's age. Speak up. Can't hear you properly." I should perhaps mention that Bartholomew and Father Christmas sound different because Bartholomew went to boarding school on the great southern continent, which drifts helplessly between Antarctica and New Zealand. And that's the origin of the Antipodean accent, because this great southern continent, apart from having an excellent boarding school where you can learn to make toys, was populated by Maoris and penguins. And the penguin, wah, 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 everyone started to speak like that. Where are we? Yeah, speak up, can't hear properly. "The line is blocked somewhere near China, I suspect," said Father Christmas. "Is this any better?" He fitted the ear trumpet into the mouthpiece and yelled at it through the top of his lungs. Yeah, that's better. You sound worried, Nicholas. What's the matter?" "We have no power in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm sitting with hundreds and thousands of electronic toys which will not work until the power comes back on. How are things at the South Pole?" No power here either. Much the same all over the world. Look, said Nicholas, with only 2 weeks to go until Christmas, I need your help. Are you busy? No, not busy at all. Everyone down south seems to have forgotten about me, but they're mad on me ruddy penguins. It's all I can do to keep the emperors in a row and circling and in a row and circling when the icebreakers come sightseeing. We have a wildlife documentary to rehearse for, but that can wait till after the power comes back on. This is all true. Well, I need your help. When we apprenticed together 200 years ago, there was no one better at handmade toy magic than you. Is there enough time to make old-fashioned toys for the children? Not if we waste any more time talking. I'm leaving it once, should be there by nightfall. With that, Bartholomew saddled 24 penguins to his fastest water sled. There you can see penguins. Some are underwater, you might not count 24. Water sled looks like an old pirate ship. And it, of course, goes past northeast Antarcticus, up around, oh, I can tell you, it's written down here what happens. By morning tea, he reached Norfolk Island, which is just slightly north of New Zealand. By lunchtime, he was whizzing through the Straits of Gibraltar. He stopped for afternoon tea in King Frederick VIII Land, which is in Greenland, and arrived at the North Pole just in time for evening drinks. So let's look at some pictures. All right, there's the North Pole. That's polar dust, which I will tell you about later. It helps them fly. There's the North Pole. Polar bear for scale, see polar bear. Launching pad for reindeer. Father Christmas lives there. Toy workshop. Father Christmas lives in the tower. Yeah, and elves live over there. Bartholomew, how wonderful to see you, cried St. Nicholas. Would you like a cup of tea? No, thank you. I had green tea in Greenland. A scotch for me, please, and a double for each of my penguins. Red label or green? Asked Nicholas. And how was your trip? Slow. The penguins decided on the scenic route. The current was too strong to swim directly. What on earth is this pile of junk? Oh, well, those are the electronic toys we built for the computer systems in North America, said Father Christmas. But these boxes have stickers on them that say made in China. I know, said Father Christmas. Nobody takes my toys seriously unless I label them from an exotic country. This is balderdash, Nicholas, exclaimed Bartholomew. You're out of touch. Children need our homemade toys. He gathered all his penguins around him. They whispered quietly amongst themselves, and then they set to work. Antarctic penguins, especially the large ones, are strong swimmers and great fishermen. Like elves, they also happen to be excellent assistant toy makers. This is so stupid. Well, we're in deep, folks. Smile through gritted teeth. You're coming with me to the end. In next to no time, Bartholomew and his penguins each laid out a toy, 25 in all, on the workbench for Father Christmas to inspect. Their conversation went something like this. There's a green label. All right. Okay, that'll do. Okay. Nicholas, what's this? Bartholomew, it's a toy train. Nicholas, but there's no plug. How does it work? Bartholomew, it runs on laughter. Oh, and what's this? It's a steamboat. And how does it work? It runs on steam, you ninny, hot air. You should be able to keep it going for days. Nicholas, what about this toy flute? Bartholomew, look, Nicholas, we're wasting valuable time. Send for the elves, let's get started. Children won't be able to be too fussy this year. On the contrary, dear Bartholomew, said Nicholas, these toys will bring magic back into their lives. Why, I think you are getting better with age. Father Christmas called in the elves, and they set to work. creating variations on Bartholomew's clever ideas. They hammered and glued and painted and chiseled for 2 solid weeks. May I draw attention to the toy in the top left-hand corner? It's an opening toy plum pudding, and inside it contains an edible elf. By early Christmas Eve, the 1.5 billion old-fashioned toys were ready. The elves and the penguins packed 750 million toys each into two giant sacks and loaded one on each sleigh. So, yeah, that's right. Father Christmas hitched 9 reindeer to his sleigh. Bartholomew harnessed the 24 penguins to his water sled. Father Christmas sprinkled a little polar dust on the penguins' flippers so they could fly better, for while they were able to swim with great speed and skim along flat land on their tummies, they had difficulty negotiating hills and mountains. And the magic dust just gave them that extra lift. Soon they were whizzing over the treetops. Now I have to explain something here to you. We go back a little. Okay. There's 2 kinds of elves at the North Pole. There's the tameable elves and there's the wild elves. And the elves, the traditional looking one down at the bottom, they were in slavery for thousands of years. Father Christmas freed them and they taught him about collecting dust off of the North Pole, which helps the reindeer fly. The top elf is an ice elf and they're untamable but they're benevolent. Okay, so then, now you know how they fly. Let's look at them flying. There we go. Okay. Soon they were whizzing over the treetops. Now, if you think it's ridiculous that penguins were made to fly, I need only remind you about reindeer. Off they went. Father Christmas covered the northern hemisphere. Bartholomew flew over the south. And while Father Christmas stuck very much to his traditional route, Bartholomew delivered toys from the tip of Batu Island in Sumatra, which is right at the southern edge of the equator, all the way down to South Orkney Island, a dreadful place, which is very close to his home in the Antarctic. And of course, everywhere in between, wherever children dwelt in the south, he made a stop. There you go. Now, that was such a hard drawing to draw. You know, the story came for the penguins pull this water sleigh, have a green Father Christmas going over the tropics in a water sled pulled by penguins, and a shape should go like that, but I have this shape to work it. It's the night before this book has to go to the printers, and I have no one to blame but myself because I wrote the story. So it was only when I realized that instead of towing like the reindeer do, what if they were up on top and they flew to carry it like the Hindenburg, you know? Then it worked. It worked. I think it worked. I'm rather proud of that one, you know? Bartholomew and Nicholas both arrived back at the North Pole in the early hours of Christmas morning. We'll stay on this slide for a while, I think. They both arrived back at the North Pole in the early hours of Christmas morning in time for a long hot soak in the bathtub and a hearty breakfast, Christmas breakfast. Of course, the elves and the reindeer and the polar bears and the penguins joined in too. There was much to celebrate. They joined in with the breakfast, not in the bathtub. The children of the world opened their eyes on Christmas morning to all sorts of surprises. Those who lived anywhere near a beach were given special golden dust to add to their sand castles, and they stayed up all year long. The little tropical island children received those magic flutes we talked about, which, when played, made the colored fish jump out of the water and into their fishing canoes. The English children got all those lovely toys which run on laughter. God knows they needed them. Sorry, no. I am half English, but I take pills for it. And also, they got magical gardening tools which sprouted radishes and carrots and cucumbers and strawberries as they turned over in the soil. The children of rainy British Columbia were given umbrellas, which, when opened, shone down bright and cheerful sunshine on their pale little faces. Of course, There were many, many other clever and wonderful things. And though you may say there is nothing that Bartholomew made which could not be made from electronics, you would be correct, but for a couple of points. Electronic magic tends to break down, and it is also mixed rather unhealthily with a need for profit, while Christmas magic is distilled down from imagination mixed purely with love. And though we all thought the world's electrical problems would be sorted out in a couple of months, in actual fact, the electricity never ever came back on. The electrical storm had fried everything beyond repair. Of course, oh, you've seen that. There we go. Of course, steam power was still available, and the world's inventors, who now had long and cozy evenings to think up clever ideas, soon found a way of producing steam power without all that sooty smoke. And do you know what the byproduct of steam power is? Steamed puddings. Very soon, hospitals and banks and businesses were open again. But now they kept only daylight hours. There was no longer any such thing as working late. Mums and dads came home from work earlier than in the previous 150 years. They lit candles and lanterns and had more time together with their children. They went on old-fashioned holidays on old-fashioned steamships, which were very, very romantic. And quite soon more children were brought into the world. Due in part to how lovely the dads thought the moms looked in lantern glow. There. Both Father Christmases were jolly happy about this. And they were much nicer children than the electronic ones had ever been, too. They played with the magical Christmas toys, they built tree houses and read lovely stories, rather like this one. And they ate dinners together with their parents, and the food was much more delicious than anything the moms used to make out of a packet. And they went to bed without any television, and they didn't even mind. And from that year on, the two Father Christmases, red and green, worked together, which is perfect, because red and green are the true colors of Christmas. And a world with two Father Christmases in it is much better than a world with only one, don't you agree? Thank you. Thank you.
Charles.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Charles.
Judy and I went to art school together 400 years ago.
500, but
You look
counting.
good, kid.
So do you,
Oh,
actually.
no, I'm well fed.
You and me both, but let's not go there. So when we were at school, who would you say your biggest influence as an instructor was?
Oh, Jim Rimmer and Fred Flintstone. No, that's not right. Fred Forster. Yeah, and well, you know, look, we had Dan Al Zimmerman for design. He was brilliant. Fred was brilliant for illustration, Jim for lettering, and Frank for life drawing. I think the most difficult thing was life drawing, and I think it's the thing that I learned the most from in art school, because it was like a bullwhip of discipline. You remember, Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And you couldn't hide behind anything, you know, which was good. Honesty, I mean, they all were honest. They were all fabulous teachers. Yeah, I can't say, you know, but who was your favorite?
Well, I would say that the person that I would see influenced you the most was Jim Rimmer.
Yeah. Well, we have similar disciplines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that was an easy enough question. Good. I'm just warning you, if anyone asks a really difficult question, I'm just going to answer the question I would like to answer. Okay? So, go ahead.
Hi, Charles. Really enjoyed the storytelling.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry it's Christmas in July.
No, that's okay.
If you really enjoyed it, please go out and buy me a Christmas present.
Well, but part of the storytelling is also kind of the oral tradition and the fact that you imbue it with something else than just the written word. But my question is this. Obviously, you kind of, the initial slides were of you in Fiji and kind of a very pared down existence. And now you're back here, and I was wondering, how have you been able to kind of remove yourself from all those distractions like the computer and all the electronic?
Well, we do have a computer in our house, and it's like a glorified typewriter. Use it for emails, because working with Folio Society in London before, it used to be, everything was handwritten correspondence, and Joe Whitlock Blunder would send me letters in calligraphy. So we had this, and it was great, but we'd only get 2 correspondences per month. And when we started on the Blue Fairy book and then moved very quickly to The Wind in the Willows, that just wasn't going to work. So then I used to fax, which I could fax from Canada. And then he just said, no, at least for this. So we are not computer literate in a greater sense than using it as a typewriter and a postage system. But I think having in Fiji no running water, no electricity, get your water by bucket from the well, go to sleep when it gets dark. Kerosene lanterns are very romantic. I think that juxtaposed with what we have here, you kind of end up appreciating both of them very much. The biggest thing I find coming back here is you go into the supermarkets, the wealth of food. Thousands of different kinds of cheese. And you know what the strangest thing? You go down the pet food aisle and there's a lot more selection than when you go down the baby food aisle. It's very strange, you know. In Fiji, there's no pet food aisle, but there's a baby food aisle. Does that answer your question? Kind of? Yeah, so sorry, what was it? How do you, I think the two opposites make for a good combination.
Right, so there's obviously a convenience, but then kind of using it just for that and not getting substitutes.
Yeah. Exactly. Convenience, and then you really appreciate everything too. Come on, Mark, you have to run.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. In the front here.
Hi, I was just curious what your creative process is like. Do you do a lot of sketches and really meticulously plan everything out before you go into the printing process?
Absolutely. Used to be I would do the pictures first and then write the stories afterwards. And now I tend to write the stories first and paint the pictures afterwards. Each picture I'll do as a sketch and then refine the sketch to something that I like, and then trace over it with tracing paper, transfer it onto watercolor blocks so that it's fresh, ink it in, and then color it first with a harmonizing wash of maybe a bistre color or a yellow ochre. This I learned from Arthur Rackham, and that gives it a harmonizing tone, and then drop in bits of pure color or do a nice, luscious wash in the background, or keep to a very anal, tight little coloring in, or do some here and then there, It's all about order and chaos. If you've just got all order, it's boring, and chaos, well, chaos is fun, chaos is fine. Mark?
I'm going with what I see first.
Okay.
My question's related to the other one. What's the highest run of books that you would do?
Well, for our own publishing company, we do, the most we'll do is 3,500 copies. But Animal Wisdom, we've done 30 or 40 books now, and we've had, most of them are what we call dogs. They don't sell. But we've had a few that did sell quite well. The How to See Fairies, we sold more than 10,000 of those. But in 5 different publications, we reprint them. Animal Wisdom, I think, was also 10,000 copies. And then Affairs of the Heart, I think more like 6. But usually it's a run, like the Christmas book, we didn't know, Christmas, people want Christmas. I like Christmas, but, so we did 1,500 copies. Now we wish we had done more. We were never satisfied. But when we handed How to See Fairies over to Smithmark, which was a publisher in New York back in 1998, they produced 25,000 copies, and they sold them all before Christmas. So on a bigger scale, in the olden days of trade publishing, there was a chance to branch out further. But we like doing small editions because we can keep the quality. And Waisiki binds them to order. So if a bookshop orders 20 books, he goes down and he makes the 20 different books they want, and we send them to our main lady in Qualicum, who puts together all the gift cards, and she looks after all our accounts and distributorship. So we don't do grand amounts because we're not really equipped to deal with success.
I wanted to just point out that Waisiki, can you stand up for a second, is right here.
There, that's the gent.
Okay, I gotcha. Sorry.
I'm just wondering, given your sort of penchant for heritage and high-quality craftsmanship, if you would ever consider publishing digitally?
You know, it's a good question. What is publishing for? So you can have people see, you can share what you're doing with people. And, as I told you before, that our idea is to try and promote beautiful things for a tender-hearted world. And tender-hearted people are hidden in all different manners all over the world. The simple question, this is the difficult question I didn't want to answer. Okay. My favorite color is green. My favorite number is 7. And in short, yes, I think some of the books that we know we would never publish again because we're doing other things, and there's limited funds for doing this. Our books are very expensive to produce, that I think some of the stories would be nice to have available. I think the way to do it is like what Mark and Ryan and Meyer and Rick did with the Canadian Content, the poem. That's a nice way of doing it, reading it and filming it and putting it on the YouTube. That was fun. And then people can see it with a bigger world than just digital, where it's on, what do you call it, iHop, or what do you call that thing that you...
iPad?
iPad. No.
Thank you.
Over there. So far, all of the questions have been women, just saying.
Hey, here's a gentleman right here. And
this kind of relates to your last question. Would you ever consider doing a podcast? Because you're an amazing storyteller, and I think a few of us would probably like to hear it and have our own bedtime stories.
What's a podcast? Is that like the YouTube thingy that we did? Is it like that? Yeah, yes. Not knowing what I'm getting myself into, of course. Sure. Does that mean it's like you read it and then you can you get to see pictures or not on a pod?
No, but it would be nice to see pictures.
Sure. I'll do anything you want.
I've been to his house, be careful. Seriously, he'll do anything you want. Where did you say there was a guy? Oh.
Hi. So I would just like to say thanks for showing us your studio space, and that is exactly the sort of studio space I would see your art coming from. And
it's just small,
Yeah, but it's so beautiful, and it matches what you're producing so well.
Oh, thank
and
you.
most of us just have this space where it's where we work, it's where we keep our stuff, and we don't craft it. I wonder if you could speak to the relationship between the space you work in and the work you produce.
Well, first of all, I've always been attracted to small spaces, cozy spaces, intimate spaces, and my work is intimate. I don't usually work much larger than this sort of format. Maybe we go sometimes that big, but generally my work is small. And I think your environment is a mirror to your own soul. I've always loved knickknacks and antiques and lovely old prints, and having a love for Rackham and for Dürer and Rembrandt. I've tried to collect prints and have them around me. My workspace, as Waisiki will tell you, he's very orderly in what he does because he's got to make room for keep that bed clear so he can have a nap. My studio space is a cluttered chaos, but I always find there's a way through it mentally. So it's no problem to have things around. I sometimes think I could work in an oil drum if I had to. It'd be fine, but it's nice to be surrounded by beauty.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up. I want to give you a MailChimp shirt. I thought that was a very clever question. The woman back here, I thought that was a very clever question. Who was that? Was you? Note that I made the sizing hopefully work for you, and you stumped him.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
that.
guys.
Thanks.